a woman's voice trembling, cutting through the static of a midnight call. Your daughter is shaking in the rain outside a gas station on Route 9. She's barefoot. She's alone. And the man who was supposed to protect her is dead in the front seat of a black sedan 2 blocks away. The line went silent. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of a man who just heard a detonator click. And then, in a voice so calm it could freeze a river, the most dangerous man in Boston whispered 5 words. Describe my daughter's face. What happened next burned an entire criminal empire to the ground in 48 hours. But it started with a woman who should have kept driving. Before we get into this, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. Trust me, you do not want to miss a single second of what's about to happen. Let's go. Grace Almeida had a rule. Don't stop. Not in this neighborhood, not at this hour, not for anything. 9 years as a paramedic in Boston had taught her that the hours between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. belonged to people who made bad decisions and the people who cleaned up after them. She was tired of being the cleanup crew. Her shift at St. Jude's had ended at 10:45. 14 hours on her feet. 2 cardiac arrests. 1 teenager who didn't make it. She could still feel the ribs cracking under her palms from the compressions. She could still hear the mother screaming in the hallway. Grace was 28 years old, and some nights she felt like she was 60. Her Honda Civic was running on fumes. She almost made it home. Almost. But the gas light had been blinking since the expressway, and the Sunoco on Route 9 was the only station between the hospital and her apartment in Dorchester. She pulled in at 11:47 p.m. The station was half dead. 1 working pump. Fluorescent lights buzzing and flickering like dying insects. A clerk behind bulletproof glass scrolling his phone. Rain hammered the pavement so hard it bounced. Grace swiped her card, filled the tank, walked back to the driver's side, and that's when she heard it. Not a scream, not a cry for help, something worse. The sound of a child whimpering. The small, exhausted, hopeless sound a child makes when they've been crying so long that their body has given up, but their fear hasn't. Grace stopped. Every instinct she had told her to get in the car. Lock the doors. Drive away. Call 911 from a safe distance. But 9 years of running toward the thing everyone else runs from had rewired something fundamental in her brain. She walked toward the sound. The girl was behind the dumpsters, curled into a ball on the wet concrete like a wounded animal. 5 years old, maybe 6. Dark hair plastered to her skull. Wearing a thin white nightgown that was soaked through and nearly transparent against her tiny frame. No shoes, no coat. Shaking so violently that her head kept bumping against the metal dumpster behind her. Grace dropped to her knees in a puddle without thinking. Her scrub pants soaked through instantly. She didn't care. Hey, sweetheart, look at me." The girl looked up, and Grace felt her stomach drop. Because those eyes, wide, dark brown, ringed with exhaustion, those weren't the eyes of a lost child. And those were the eyes of a child who had seen something no child should ever see. "My name is Grace. I'm a paramedic. That means I help people. Can you tell me your name?" The girl's lips were blue. Her teeth chattered so hard she could barely form words. Lena. Lena, where are your parents? Where's your mommy or daddy?" Nanny brought me. She put me here. She said wait. Then she got back in the car with the man." "What man?" "The man with the scar. He was angry. He yelled at her. Then the car drove away." Grace pulled off her jacket and wrapped it around the girl. Hypothermia was setting in. She could feel it in Lena's skin. Cold, clammy, pulse fast and thready. "How long have you been out here, baby?" Lena shook her head. "I don't know. Long. I tried to count, but I kept forgetting the numbers." Grace's chest cracked open. She pulled the girl against her body, wrapping her arms around her, transferring heat. "Lena, do you know your daddy's phone number? Or your mommy's?" "Mommy's in heaven." Grace closed her eyes. "But daddy gave me this." Lena reached into the pocket of her soaked nightgown and pulled out a phone. Matte black, no case, military grade. "He said only use it if the monsters come." Her chin trembled. "The monsters came, Grace." Grace took the phone. One contact, no name, just a number. "He told me not to call unless it's really, really bad," Lena whispered. "Is it really, really bad?" Grace looked at this child, barefoot, hypothermic, dumped behind a dumpster at midnight by people who clearly wanted her found or wanted her not found. "Yeah, sweetheart, this is really, really bad." She pressed call, one ring. "Lena." The voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't ask questions. It gave answers. "This isn't Lena. My name is Grace Almeida. I'm a paramedic. I found a little girl behind a gas station on Route 9. She says her name is Lena. She's barefoot, soaking wet, showing signs of hypothermia, and she says her nanny left her here with a man who has a scar." Silence. 2 seconds. 3. 4. Then the voice changed. The control didn't break. It sharpened, like a blade being pulled from a sheath. "Describe my daughter's face." "Dark brown eyes, dark hair. She's wearing a white nightgown with little blue stars on the hem." "Yes." "Is she conscious?" "Yes, but she's cold. Very cold. She needs—" "Is there anyone else near you? Any vehicles you don't recognize? Anyone watching?" Grace looked around. The parking lot was empty. The road was dark. "No, it's just us." "Listen to me very carefully, Grace. Do not move. Do not call the police. Do not call an ambulance. Take my daughter inside the station and keep her warm. I will be there in 10 minutes. If anyone, and I mean anyone, approaches you before I arrive, you take Lena into the bathroom, you lock the door, and you do not open it until you hear my voice say the word lighthouse. Do you understand?" "Who are you?" 10 minutes. The line went dead. Grace stared at the phone. "Lena, honey, who is your daddy?" Lena pressed closer against Grace's chest. "He keeps people safe," she whispered, "but sometimes the bad people try to hurt him. That's why we have the lighthouse word. So I always know it's really him." Grace carried Lena inside the gas station. The clerk barely looked up. "I need towels, blankets, anything warm," Grace said. "There's a child out here." The clerk pointed to a rack of overpriced fleece blankets. Grace grabbed 2, wrapped them around Lena, and sat in the corner with the girl on her lap, rubbing her arms and legs to restore circulation. 7 minutes. That's how long it actually took. She heard the engines first. Not one car. A convoy. Moving fast. Moving together. 3 black Escalades tore into the parking lot in formation. They didn't park. They surrounded the station. Cut off every exit. Doors opened. 5 men emerged. Massive. Dark suits. Earpieces. Hands resting near their hips with a casualness that meant they could draw in under a second. One of them spoke into his wrist. "Perimeter secure. No hostiles." Then the back door of the center vehicle opened. The man who stepped out was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", built like someone who had fought for everything he had, because he had. He wore a black overcoat over a charcoal suit. No tie, Rain hit his shoulders and he didn't flinch, didn't blink. His face was cut from stone, high cheekbones, a jaw that could split wood, dark eyes that scanned the scene the way a general surveys a battlefield. This was Marco Valenti, head of the Valenti family, 15 years as the most powerful man in New England's underworld. The FBI had a task force with his name on it. The newspapers called him the architect because everything he built was unbreakable. But right now, in this moment, he wasn't the architect. He was a father. He walked through the rain, pushed open the glass door. His men fanned in behind him. The clerk behind the bulletproof glass went white as a sheet. Marco's eyes found Lena, and the mask crumbled. "Lena! Daddy!" The girl launched off Grace's lap and ran. Marco dropped to one knee on the dirty tile floor. He caught her mid-stride and pulled her into him so tight it looked like he was trying to press her back into his chest, where she'd be safe forever. One hand cradled her head. The other ran down her arms, her legs, checking, always checking. "Did they hurt you? Did anyone touch you?" "No, Daddy, I'm just cold. Grace kept me warm." Marco pressed his lips to the top of her wet hair. He held them there. His eyes were shut. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscles in his neck stood out like cables. 5 seconds. For 5 seconds, the most feared man in Boston was just a father holding his daughter. Then he opened his eyes and looked at Grace. "Now listen." What Grace didn't know yet, what she couldn't have known, was that the man with the scar Lena mentioned had a name, and that name was about to change everything. But we'll get to that, because first Marco had questions, and Marco's questions weren't the kind you could avoid answering. He stood slowly, lifting Lena with one arm. He walked toward Grace, each step deliberate, controlled, measuring her the way a predator measures something it hasn't decided to eat yet. "You found her." "Yes. You called me. She asked me to. You stayed." "She's a child, of course I stayed." Marco studied her. His gaze dropped to her hospital ID badge, still clipped to her scrub top. Grace Almeida, EMTP, St. Jude Medical Center. "A paramedic," he said, like he was filing it. "Yes." "You're shaking." "I'm cold, and honestly, the small army you brought isn't helping my nerves." Something flickered across his face. Not a smile. The ghost of one. The memory of what a smile used to look like. He turned to the largest of his men. "Roman." "Boss, the nanny, Patricia Coelho. Find her, and find out who she was working with. I want names, I want addresses. I want the scar." "The scar, boss?" "My daughter described a man with a scar. Someone was at the handoff point before Grace arrived. Someone was supposed to take Lena. Find out who. And Roman, yeah, I want him breathing when you bring him to me." Roman nodded once and disappeared into the rain with 2 others. Marco turned back to Grace. "I owe you a debt." "You don't owe me anything. I decide what I owe." His voice was soft, but it had a finality to it that left no room for negotiation. He reached into his coat and pulled out a card. Matty Black, silver embossed number. No name. "If you ever need anything, I appreciate it, but I just want to go home, dry off and sleep for about 2 days." "Then go home, Grace Almeida." He paused. "But keep the card. The world is unpredictable. You might find yourself in a situation where a phone call to the right person is the difference between a bad night and your last night." He said it like a man who knew that from experience. Grace took the card. She looked at Lena, who was already falling asleep on her father's shoulder, one tiny fist gripping his coat lapel. "She's tough," Grace said. "She's her mother's daughter." There was a weight to those words that Grace didn't fully understand. Not yet. She walked to her car, started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and in the rearview mirror, she watched Marco Valenti standing in the rain, holding his daughter surrounded by armed men, staring at the spot where Lena had been left like he was memorizing it, like he was making it a crime scene in his mind. What Grace didn't know was that 3 blocks from that gas station, Roman and his team found a black sedan parked under a dead streetlight. Inside was a man named Sergei Volkov, former Russian military, current freelance enforcer. He had a 9mm in his hand and a bullet hole in his chest that he didn't put there. He was dead, and in his phone, 3 text messages, all from the same number. The first, package at location, 12 a.m., don't be late. The second, nanny confirmed, she's cooperating. The third, Valenti's daughter for Valenti's territory. This is how we take the crown. The number belonged to a man named Enzo Carrera, and Enzo Carrera was about to find out what happens when you reach for the one thing Marco Valenti loves more than power. 48 hours later, Grace was at the end of a double shift when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She'd been screening calls since that night. Something about the whole thing had left a residue on her. Not fear exactly. More like the feeling you get when you realize you've been standing at the edge of a cliff and didn't know it. She answered anyway. Grace. Marco's voice. Calm, steady, but underneath it, something she hadn't heard before. Urgency. How did you get this number? I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. The night you found Lena, the man with the scar. Hey, did you see him? No, Lena mentioned him. I never saw anyone. Did anyone see you? Another car in the lot? Someone walking by? The gas station clerk. Did he see you with Lena? Grace felt ice forming in her stomach. The clerk saw me carry her inside. Why? The clerk's name is Danny Morrow. He works for Enzo Carrera. He runs numbers through the station. And he called Carrera 15 minutes after you left to tell him that a woman in hospital scrubs walked out with my daughter. Grace's hand tightened on the phone. What does that mean? It means Carrera knows your face, and Carrera is a man who removes witnesses the way you remove a stain, without thinking about it. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying a car has been parked outside your apartment building since yesterday morning. Gray Nissan. 2 men inside. They haven't moved. Grace walked to her window on instinct. She pulled the curtain back an inch. Gray Nissan. 2 men. Just sitting there. Her blood went cold. I need you to leave your apartment, Marco said. Right now. Don't pack. Don't hesitate. Walk to the back entrance. Get in your car and drive to the address I'm about to text you. I should call the police. The police will take a report. They'll promise to look into it. And by the time they file the paperwork, those men will be inside your apartment. This isn't their world, Grace. It's mine. And in my world, I protect the people who protect my family. Grace stared at the gray Nissan. I barely know you. You knew me well enough to save my daughter. Silence. I'm sending the address now. The Valenti estate sat behind iron gates that opened only after 3 separate security checks. The house was a stone fortress, classical architecture, armed perimeter, the kind of place that whispered old money but screamed new power. Grace pulled up the driveway. A woman in her 60s, silver hair, sharp eyes, opened the front door before Grace could knock. You must be Grace. I'm Rosa. Come in. Lena hasn't stopped talking about you. Inside, the house was warm, dark wood, expensive art, the smell of something cooking, but beneath the elegance, there was a hum, the hum of a machine running at full power. Men moved through the halls with purpose. Phones rang, doors opened and closed. And then Lena appeared at the top of the stairs. Grace! She flew down the staircase in pajamas, its bare feet slapping the marble, and launched herself at Grace's legs. You came back! Daddy said you might come back. I told him you would because you're the bravest person I ever met. Grace knelt down. Hey, superstar. You look a lot better than the last time I saw you. Rosa made me soup and Daddy let me sleep in his bed, and I only had one bad dream. Only one? That's pretty impressive. Daddy stayed awake the whole night. He sat in the chair and watched the door. Grace looked up. Marco was standing at the end of the hallway, leaning against the doorframe of his study, arms crossed, watching the scene with an expression she couldn't quite read. He waited until Rosa took Lena to the kitchen. Then he walked toward Grace. Thank you for coming. I didn't have a lot of options, considering the armed welcoming committee outside my apartment. They're gone. What? The two men in the Nissan, they've been relocated. Relocated. You don't need the details. I think I do, actually. Marco looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time Grace saw something behind the stone. Exhaustion, grief, the look of a man fighting a war on multiple fronts and running out of time. Enzo Carrera tried to kidnap my daughter, Marco said. He paid my nanny to deliver Lena to a handoff point where his man Sergei was supposed to take her. The plan was to use Lena as leverage to force me to surrender my shipping routes. Patricia panicked and left Lena at the gas station instead of handing her over. Sergei went to retrieve her. Someone shot him before he could. Who shot him? That's what I'm trying to find out. Because it wasn't my people. So someone else is involved. Someone who wanted the kidnapping to fail. Someone who wanted me to find my daughter. Someone who is playing a game I don't yet understand. Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression hardened. Stay here tonight. Rosa will take care of you. Tomorrow I'll have answers. And then you go home, and this becomes a memory. He turned and walked into his study. The door closed. Grace stood in the hallway. She could hear Lena laughing in the kitchen. She could hear the rain starting again outside. And she had the strangest feeling that Marco Valenti was wrong, that this was not going to become a memory, that it was just beginning. At 2 a.m., Grace was awake. She couldn't sleep, not in this house. It's not with the guards pacing outside her window and the muffled sounds of phone calls bleeding through the walls. She got up, walked down the hallway, and heard a voice coming from Marco's study. The door was cracked open. I don't care what he says, Dominic. The shipment route is irrelevant. He used my daughter. My daughter. Grace paused. She knew she shouldn't listen, but the paramedic in her, the part trained to assess a situation before entering it, wouldn't let her walk away. A second voice, deeper, rougher, coming from inside the room. Marco, I'm telling you, Carrera didn't act alone. He doesn't have the connections to flip Patricia. Somebody inside our organization gave him the nanny's schedule. Someone close. Silence. How close? Marco's voice was dangerously quiet. I don't know yet, but I'm looking at everyone. Everyone. Including yourself? Including myself, if that's what it takes for you to trust the answer. The second voice belonged to someone named Dominic. Grace filed that away. She crept back to her room, but as she passed Lena's door, she heard whimpering. She pushed the door open. Lena was tangled in the sheets, thrashing. A nightmare. Grace sat on the edge of the bed. She placed her hand on Lena's forehead. Warm, no fever, and began to stroke her hair. Shh. You're safe. You're home. Nobody's going to hurt you. Lena's eyes opened, wide, terrified. The Scar Man, she whispered. He's coming back. No, he's not, I promise. He said he was going to take me far away. He said Daddy would never find me. Grace's blood ran cold. Lena, the Scar Man talked to you? When? When Nanny Patricia was putting me in the car. He was there, and he told Patricia to hurry up. And then he looked at me and smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile where the person isn't happy. What else did he say? He said, "Tell your daddy Enzo says hello." And then he laughed. Grace held the girl until she fell back asleep. Then she walked straight to Marco's study and knocked. The door opened. Marco stood there, shirt untucked, sleeves rolled, eyes red. Lena just told me something. The Scar Man. He spoke to her. He said, "Tell your daddy Enzo says hello." This wasn't just a kidnapping, Marco. This was a message. They wanted Lena to remember his face. They wanted her to deliver those exact words. Marco stared at her. She watched something shift behind his eyes, something clicking into place. "That's why they shot Sergei," he said slowly. "Carrera never intended for the handoff to succeed. He wanted Lena found. He wanted me to know it was him. He wanted me angry and reckless. Why? Because an angry man makes mistakes, and a reckless man walks into traps." Marco sat down behind his desk. He was still for a long time. "He's baiting you," Grace said. "Yes." "So don't take the bait." Marco looked up at her. "You're telling the most powerful crime boss in New England how to handle his enemies?" "I'm telling a father that his daughter needs him alive." The room was quiet. "You remind me of someone," Marco said. His voice was different now, softer, like a door opening to a room he usually kept locked. "Who?" "My wife, Elena. She was the only person who ever talked to me like I was just a man, not a boss, not a name, a man." "Lena told me about her. She said she's in heaven. She was murdered 3 years ago, made to look like a car accident. I've spent every day since trying to find out who ordered it." He paused. "Last month I found out. It was Carrera. He killed my wife to destabilize me during a territory negotiation. And now he's using my daughter to finish what he started." Grace felt the full weight of what she'd walked into. This wasn't just a kidnapping. This was a 3-year war. "What are you going to do?" Marco stood. He walked to the window. The rain was streaking down the glass. "I'm going to do what I always do, Grace. I'm going to build something that can't be broken." It took 4 days. 4 days of quiet, methodical, devastating precision. Grace stayed at the estate, not because Marco asked, but because Lena had started having nightmares every night, and Grace was the only person who could calm her without waking up the entire house. By day, Grace watched Marco work, not with guns, not with violence, with information. He had an army of accountants, lawyers, and investigators. He pulled financial records. He traced shell companies. He built a case so airtight it could have been presented to a grand jury. And on the 5th night, he made his move. But it wasn't the move anyone expected. Enzo Carrera was sitting in the private dining room of Bianchi's, the Italian restaurant in the North End that served as his unofficial headquarters. He had a plate of veal piccata in front of him, a glass of Barolo in his hand, and 2 bodyguards flanking the door. He was celebrating. In his mind, Marco Valenti was finished. The kidnapping stunt had worked. The word on the street was that Marco was holed up in his estate, scared, paranoid, losing grip. Carrera's allies were circling. 3 of Marco's shipping partners had already reached out to discuss new arrangements. Enzo Carrera was a man who smiled with too many teeth and talked with too many words, and believed that cruelty was the same thing as strength. He was about to learn the difference. The restaurant door opened. A cold draft blew in. Marco Valenti walked in alone. No guards, no guns that were visible. Just a man in a dark suit, walking through a room full of people who worked for the man who had tried to kidnap his daughter. Carrera choked on his wine. He set the glass down. His bodyguards reached for their weapons. "Tell them to stop," Marco said calmly. He was standing 6 feet from the table, hands in his pockets. See, because if a single hand touches a single weapon, the 47 federal agents parked outside this building will have the probable cause they need to walk through that door. And trust me, Enzo, you do not want what's on the warrant. Carrera's smile flickered. He raised a hand. The bodyguards froze. "Marco, what a surprise. Sit down. Have some wine." "I'll stand." "Suit yourself. What brings you to my side of town?" "You know why I'm here." Carrera leaned back. He spread his hands like a man with nothing to hide, except Grace had learned that the wider a man spreads his hands, the more he's hiding. "I heard about your daughter. Terrible thing. Children should be protected. It's a cruel world." "It is, and you made it crueler." "That's a heavy accusation, Marco." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." Patricia Coelho confessed. "She gave us everything. The payments, the timeline, your man Sergey, the route. She even gave us the phone you used to coordinate it. The one you thought you destroyed. You didn't destroy it well enough." Carrera's smile died. "And here's what else I have," Marco continued, his voice never rising above a conversational tone. "Financial records linking you to the shell company that paid for the car bomb that killed my wife 3 years ago. Elena Valenti. Remember her? Because I do. Every single day." The blood drained from Carrera's face. "You're bluffing." "I'm the architect, Enzo. I don't bluff. I build. And what I've built over the last 4 days is a case file. 3 copies. One is with the FBI. One is with the Boston Globe. And one—" Marco reached into his jacket. Carrera flinched. The bodyguards tensed. Marco pulled out a manila envelope and set it on the table. "One is right here, for you, so you can see exactly how thoroughly you've destroyed yourself." Carrera didn't touch the envelope. His hands were shaking. "What do you want?" he whispered. Marco leaned in, close enough that only Carrera could hear him. "I want you to spend the rest of your life knowing that you reached for my daughter, that you killed the mother of my child, and that I didn't need a single bullet to end you. I just needed patience." He straightened up. "The FBI will be here in about 6 minutes. I'd use that time to call a lawyer. You're going to need several." Marco turned and walked out. Same pace, same calm, same steady footsteps. He didn't look back. Carrera sat frozen. The veal piccata went cold. His bodyguards exchanged looks but didn't move. Nobody moved. 6 minutes later, the doors opened again. But this time it wasn't a man in a dark suit. It was 47 federal agents with badges and handcuffs. The story ran on every news station the next morning. The Carrera organization dismantled overnight. Racketeering charges, conspiracy, murder for hire. Evidence so comprehensive that 3 of Carrera's own lieutenants flipped before lunch. Enzo Carrera was denied bail. He was transferred to a federal facility where the windows didn't open and the walls didn't listen to his complaints. Patricia Coelho cooperated fully and entered witness protection. She would never work with children again. And the man with the scar, Sergei Volkov? The investigation revealed he was shot by one of Carrera's own people. A cleanup job. Carrera never intended for Sergei to survive the night, because dead men don't contradict the story you're trying to tell. 2 weeks later, Grace found an envelope on her kitchen counter. No postmark, no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. Grace, you asked me what I was going to do. I told you I was going to build something unbreakable. I did. But what I didn't say is that the foundation was you. You stopped when you could have kept driving. You picked up a phone for a stranger's child. You held my daughter through her nightmares and told me the truth when everyone around me was too afraid to speak. I've made arrangements. Your student loans are paid. Your ambulance unit has new equipment arriving Monday. And there is a trust in your name. Not charity, but a correction. The world has been undervaluing you for 9 years, and I find that unacceptable. One more thing. Elena drew you something. It's enclosed. She calls you the Rain Lady. She asked me yesterday if you could come for Saturday dinner because she's learning to make pasta with Rosa, and she says you need to taste her sauce. I told her I'd ask, so I'm asking. M. Grace unfolded the drawing. Done in crayon, a tall woman with brown hair standing in the rain, holding a little girl. Above them, in shaky 5-year-old handwriting, 2 words. My angel. Grace sat at the kitchen table for a long time. She thought about the gas station, the rain, the sound of a child whimpering behind a dumpster. She thought about how close she'd come to driving past. She picked up the black card and dialed. 1 ring. Grace. Warm. Careful. The voice of a man who didn't let many people in, and who was terrified of what happened when he did. Or tell Lena I'll be there Saturday, but her sauce better be good, 'cause I'm a harsh critic. Silence. Then a sound she didn't expect. Marco Valenti laughed, a real laugh, low and surprised and human, the kind of laugh that sounded like it hadn't been used in 3 years. She'll be thrilled. Marco, yeah, thank you for keeping me safe, for protecting me when you didn't have to. A pause. You protected her first, Grace. Everything I did after that was just catching up. And that, my friends, is the story of the midnight call. It's the story of a paramedic who broke her own rule and stopped when she should have kept driving. It's the story of a little girl who held onto a phone in the rain and believed someone would answer. And it's the story of a man who built an empire out of fear, only to discover that the most unbreakable thing he ever built was the trust of a woman who knelt in a puddle to save a stranger's child. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the army, it's the one who stops. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. It tells the algorithm to push this video to more people, and honestly, your support means everything to me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join the family. I've got a story coming next that is going to absolutely wreck you in the best way possible. Now drop a comment below. Be honest. If you found a stranger's child shaking in the rain at midnight, would you have stopped? And if you found a phone with a number you didn't recognize, would you have made the call? I read every single comment, every one. Until next time, stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting, it's stopping.